up a script.
You're supposed to start with.
No, it's going to be edited anyway.
Okay, first episode of the Duterte government pandemic crimes, or Kwentuhang Pandemya. Episode 1. Oh God, there's a lot to talk about. Why are we doing this? Because people have already forgotten.
The Church of Forgetting, as the writer said.
Who said that?
A writer that Russell Brand was quoting regarding what's happening in Ukraine right now.
What was the context?
The context was the Church of Forgetting. People forget the history. We're 2 years in, more than 2 years of this pandemic, and people already it seems like a distant memory what the foul ups, the misdemeanors, the faults, the criminal acts that the government has.
So the author talked about the Church of Forgetting. No, what was his context?
Ukraine. It's talking about history and how the way the Americans act.
Okay.
The context of.
I like that kasi the phrase the Church of Forgetting, because in the Philippines it's always we're in the Church of Forgetting. People have really short memories about a lot of things.
You know why? Because it's like one thing after another, one crisis after another. It's so hard just trying to survive.
It's actually very stressful to live in the Philippines. We're so used to it. That's why when we go to other countries, we're so like, wow, it's not stressful here. People who live here are so used to huge amounts of stress coming from just transportation problems, the weather,
bureaucracy,
natural disasters,
traffic,
people not caring in government, not caring enough. What else? So, and then the Church of Forgetting to add to all that. So it's really stressful to live here, but we're just lucky that we don't have to deal with so much stress because we don't have kids, or at least we have like a lot of things that that make things easier, at least for us. But it's just harder because we're already middle-aged. But,
And we take into consideration that many people are in definitely less fortunate position than we are in. So we feel bad for those people because we're already feeling stressed. But I can't imagine.
I can't imagine because at least we don't have pets or we don't have children. We only have to take care of my mother once in a while and
we're not living hand to mouth. Most people in our country are living hand to mouth.
I mean, you're fortunate to have a job where you can do it online.
Mm-hmm.
Most people my brother is fortunate and his wife that they have jobs that they can do at home. But not everyone has that level of education or skill to be able to do that. So, our companies that employ them that can do that, so there were people who were more blessed than others, and that's the sad part because I didn't like seeing grown men like taxi drivers crying in the middle of everything.
Which we'll be talking about in other episodes. But anyway, for today, we're talking about the beginnings, the origins of where this thing happened, and of course...
The
pandemic, of course. So already around late November, December, there's already news about things happening in Wuhan at the time. There already was news around. But here in the Philippines... fittingly, before Chinese New Year at least, we're talking about the period between January 13, 2020 to February 3rd, 2020. So,
it was the year of the rat, leap year.
Yeah. A leap year, the year of the rat.
Leap year is usually associated with
a lot of stuff that's not
crazy things.
Crazy things happening. And of course, year of the rat, fittingly, whether or not you believe in zodiacs, a fitting metaphor because we're all rats stuck in our holes, especially in the Philippines, the longest
lockdown. The pandemic is really suitable for the rats.
The rats.
The plague.
The plague was caused by rats in Europe, the bubonic plague. But we begin with February 13. Why? Because it's Taal blew up.
January 13,
2020. Sorry, January 13, 2020. Taal blew up. After decades, the last time it blew up was in the 70s, I think. We checked the history of any kind of violent eruption. It blew up on a Sunday. There were tourists there, and of course, people who lived near the volcano. People had to be evacuated. People scrambled. the most aside from friends nearly, running for their lives, like a colleague and a friend and a filmmaker I look up to. It took him 10 hours to drive back. He left early.
About 7 hours.
He left early. That's about 8 to 10. He told me. I remember posting about it.
And then he posted his car
was completely covered in
caked.
ash, caked with ash. So
Caked with ash.
So it looked like an apocalyptic thing if you look at the photos from that time. But anyway, the point is that's how the year began, and of course we had no idea how bad it was going to get in 2020, but that was like already an indication. And the day that it happened, my wife met her nephew for the first time, face to face, on the same day, on that Sunday. She met, and then you talk about that.
Oh, the Sunday afternoon. The
Yeah.
first time I was meeting my nephew, because he had just turned 1 or something. Some months before. So after they finished visiting us here at home, then they left. In a couple of hours, we found out that Taal volcano blew up.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, because we live here and we're kind of old already, we're about middle-aged, so I've been through how many earthquakes and eruptions, right? So we know that the next thing that's going to happen is ashfall.
Yeah.
So at least we had some leftover masks from a decade ago that were just stored.
From SARS, from
that being ill or
the
whatever.
previous epidemic, and from then.
So we had some 3M masks. So little did we know that would be the start of the next 2 years wearing masks. And we're still wearing masks up to now. But for Taal, for ashfall, it was a different kind of mask. It was the N95.
Yes,
because it's ashfall, and because you have asthma, that's the first thing that you dug out.
Not just asthma. I mean, it was silica. It's pretty much glass. It's like what stuff you used to make glass, so you could actually shred.
No, not the mask. The silica is from the eruption.
I know, the silica of the eruption. That's what I'm saying. You could basically shred your lungs if you breathe in enough of the ash. You could shred your lungs. So
that was a foreshadowing of wearing masks for the next 2 years, and we're still wearing masks.
We had no idea that we would not be able to see each other's faces on the street.
So we had no idea. I haven't seen my nephew in person. I did see him. When did we see him?
Last year.
December.
Yeah.
Oh, so it took how long before I saw him again?
It took almost...
I saw him October of 2020. Then we saw him.
Yeah.
Parang another string of lockdowns happened, and I saw him again December of 2021.
Yeah.
So it's like I saw him October 2020 and then December of 2021 because of all these lockdowns, which was all part of the longest lockdown in the world.
Yes.
Basically.
So that was the foreshadowing, unfortunately, the masks and then going out in goggles and N95.
And then, how did it start?
How did it start? Evie's birthday, late January, just before the end of January, and then in between that, her birthday and then my mother's birthday, which is the first day of February. So, Evie's birthday, we're at the hotel, and of course, news is still coming out about what's happening in Italy, people dying.
Were we at a hotel?
Yes, we're at the hotel.
Because the morning we were gonna check out, we found out that
Kobe died.
Kobe Bryant
and nine other people died in the helicopter crash. His daughter and the other people.
Why is it people die on my birthday? Like the Challenger, it happened also
29
on my birthday.
and number 9 if you're going to numerology. Number 9. It's okay for you, but it's not good for other people.
The Challenger happened. Now this time, that in 2020, it was Kobe Bryant who died. And then we were in a hotel and we heard the news. We were having breakfast ba?
Yeah. I mean, she told me, she's like, he dead. Like, what? He dead? And then, of
told
course, there was news already coming out of, Italy. What was happening in Italy already.
That there was COVID?
It was pretty bad already.
Did they have a name for it already?
They called it the Corona. It was
Corona.
Still currently the Wuhan Coronavirus, but because of political correctness and
the COVID happened later,
and also whitewashing, not to really give us any idea whether or not it originated in Wuhan. The point is, that's the first major outbreak, which was in Wuhan, And then from Wuhan, it went into, Europe and Italy especially. Italy was really...
So that was at the hotel. Then in a few days, we found ourselves getting on a plane to Bacolod for your mom's birthday, 70th birthday. And then the topic of the conversation was...
But before that...
What?
Before that, we didn't just talk about it at my mother's birthday. We were already talking to a relative of mine online because he was also monitoring the situation. And he already told us that locally there was already a problem because there was pretty much the one who probably became patient zero. There was a Chinese couple.
No, not probably. He was
patient zero. The Chinese couple who ended up in San Lazaro Hospital according to the news article. Again, we went back and re-researched January 31. Later on, the guy passes away. The guy dies
in San Lazaro.
In San Lazaro, the woman survives. And of course, this is connected still to we were wondering later on. In other episodes, we'll be talking about why men were the ones affected.
Your relative said that he knew that they had been booked at a Dumaguete hotel.
Yes, because he knew people from Dumaguete.
But he told us that at the birthday party.
No, also online. He told me online first. He told me online first, not just... we were talking online, not just at the...
And then...
So the people in Dumaguete were worried about that already. And of course, I was worried how would it spill over into...
I was worried about riding the airplane and they had been on the airplane.
I know. So Evie was already wearing a mask. Very few people were there. Aside from Yvette, there were other people wearing masks already on the plane. But nobody had any idea what was coming. What was going to happen with the lockdowns and then the surges and all these things.
So you mean people were already dying in Italy in January?
They were. We can double check. But they were already dying, yes, I remember. If you can double check.
Okay. And then, what did our beloved president do?
Well, obviously, this will be discussed further. But the first pandemic crime, of course, is completely downplaying the virus.
Saying that? What's the article?
I'll read out the article, actually.
Parts of it lang.
I'd like to read.
You can't read the whole thing.
This article came out February 3, 2020. And this is, of course, if people wonder, it's a Manila Bulletin article written by Mr. Argil Geducos. If you're thinking that I'm reading a Dilawan paper, I'm going to get it's an administration paper. And I actually quoted him as saying, as such, everything is well in the country. There's nothing really to be extra scared of that coronavirus thing, although it has affected a lot of countries. But, one or two in a country is not really that fearsome. We already confirmed 2 cases or a couple. The coronavirus is scaring people all over. The response of the people from the initial reports of the coronavirus was almost hysterical when there really was no need for it, actually. This is what our president said. If there is really a virus going around, why do you have to be hysterical? Why don't you just go to the hospital and have yourself treated?
That's what he said, yeah.
Tayo mga resilient, ang most resilient. Palagay ko hindi abot dito yan. We are the most resilient.
Really scientific answer.
Really scientific answers. Really brilliant scientific, based on facts and answers. I believe it will not spread here. Keep faith with humanity. Do not fear a pandemic. SARS also disappeared suddenly. It has a lifespan and it loses steam because people over time also acquire immunity.
He said, I assure you, even without vaccines, it will just die a natural death.
Yes. That's the next line.
So at the time, what did the WHO say? There were more than 17,000 confirmed cases.
Yeah.
The outbreak, there was already deaths in China?
Yeah, that's in China already. Department of Health confirmed last week. Okay, my mistake. Italy hadn't hit the shit hadn't hit the fan yet. Italy pala.
I knew that.
But sorry, my mistake. But it wasn't hitting Italy yet. But the sad thing is, we were the first confirmed death outside of China. The guy
that
was
patient
the first.
Zero who was in San Lazaro.
Actually, patient zero, according to this article, was the woman. She gave it to the guy.
But the guy was the one who died.
That was the guy was the one who died. She was patient. The Chinese woman. The Department of Health confirmed last week that a Chinese woman from Wuhan, China, the epicenter of the virus. Again, the language being used, the epicenter of the virus, and now that's completely been erased in just
The
2 years.
epicenter of the virus
Was being treated for nCoV in Manila. No,
her
what?
partner, however,
Died 2 days later
later
because of the
because of
virus.
the virus.
So she gave it to him. Why must I emphasize the epicenter of the virus? Because even now, we still don't know where it began. Because the Chinese government, of course, refuses to say, to give any proper data or any proper investigation by the WHO and also other officials. The language is still being used here. The epicenter of the virus, Wuhan, China. This was no longer used later on.
You must emphasize what?
This line, the epicenter of the virus, because that's no longer being used in different articles anymore about COVID.
Yeah, they stopped talking about Wuhan.
Wuhan coronavirus.
But it's back now.
Whether or not it was the epicenter, the point is it's where it was.
That guy was from
broke out.
The couple was from Wuhan. They traveled to Cebu and Dumaguete.
Yes.
For,
then,
I don't know, holiday.
Then later on, January 31, got admitted at San Lazaro.
So by the time your mom's birthday was done, he had died already?
I think he had died already. 2 days later.
By the time we got back to Manila, it had already spread? Were there already people?
Well, according to this article by Philippine Star, which was January 31, 2020, a headline.
We hadn't come back yet.
We hadn't come back yet.
A 38-year-old Chinese woman.
Yes, tested positive for the virus. Patient 0 arrived from Wuhan through Hong Kong on January 21. She visited Cebu and Dumaguete, so confirmed the Dumaguete Hotel,
on January 25.
Before seeking medical help in Manila on January 25. San Lazaro Hospital. So, San Lazaro, of course, is a hospital which specializes in infectious diseases. It's a government hospital.
She was asymptomatic?
Asymptomatic, but she gave it to her.
Wow.
She gave it to her partner, who passed away a few days later. And then here, according to this article, at that point, DOH is still monitoring 29 patients from under investigation, 23 of which are currently admitted, while remaining 5 have been discharged under strict monitoring. 29 patients, 18 are in Metro Manila, 4 in Central Visayas, 3 are in Western Visayas, and each was recorded in Mimaropa, Eastern Visayas, Northern Mindanao, and Davao region. So, first there were 2, and then suddenly there already were...
That was Philippine Star what date?
Philippine Star, January 31, 2020.
Okay. So, is that the end of the outline?
No. The end of the outline is...
Where?
The end of the outline is... Duterte also was accusing Filipinos of being xenophobic. We're not being xenophobic about Chinese. We're not saying that all the Chinese people have the virus. The point is the epicenter is in Wuhan.
They should have already
stopped
the border gates, closed the border
not allowed
gates,
tourists in from China.
Not allowed Chinese tourists, and there were so many that time.
They were still allowing them in. Even during the lockdown, there was rumors that they're still allowing some of them in.
For a while, they were.
They were.
Until people started complaining.
Complaining that, of course. Well, that's a different issue, but it's still connected, of course. The whole West Philippine Sea, South China Sea issue, Duterte being considered a puppet of the Chinese government, and so on and so forth. Downplayed, we'll look for the articles both by Duque and Duterte. But again, accusing critics of xenophobia instead of just, doing his job.
Not articles by them, but things they said in the article.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
So, here we go. We ended February 3. You heard what Duterte said in those articles. We will leave the links at the bottom of this video for all the articles if you want to reread them. This is what he said.
Every episode, we will put the articles from Philippine Star, Manila Bulletin, and various other sources.
Whatever we find.
Because we use only proper news articles.
Yes, we don't use bloggers and Wikipedia.
And Cheers. I used to write for one of those newspapers, so I know.
And case in point.
Actually, two of those.
Yeah, the Philippine lockdown happens in March 15.
2020.
The government had over a month to prepare. Let's see what happens in the subsequent episodes of what happened. If they were able to do
in the world's longest lockdown.
In the world's longest lockdown, if they're able to actually do anything properly. So, of course, what Mr. Duterte mentioned again, let me reiterate what he said again. The choice
Well,
lines.
he doesn't really care whatever he says, right? It just goes out the window.
Okay. Kagaya ng just like SARS, I assure you, even without vaccines, it will just die a natural death. We are repeating it again because I must connect it to the last thing I'm going to say. Another thing he said. Why are you hysterical? Which of course is always his gaslighting tactic. Why are you hysterical?
Gaslighting.
Always gaslighting.
It's what narcissists like to do. If you study, throughout the pandemic, I kept studying basic psychology because I could not get through it understanding his speeches without studying basic psychology about narcissists. And everything. Then after I studied it, and researched, I realized that, now I understand him.
Yes, why is he behaving that way?
Then it became easier to understand him after that.
And all the people surround him are little narcissist satellites. He's the
they're
sun.
all
He's the sun and the moon.
If you study narcissism, or what are the kinds of narcissists? There are two kinds or something.
There's many kinds. There's even such a thing as a noble narcissist.
Yeah, noble narcissist. Anyway, after you study narcissists in those little, you can find psychology articles everywhere and just, do your own research. That's the only way you're going to be able to understand people like them.
And at least take them without,
You don't take what they say seriously because you understand it in the framework of narcissism.
Yes. You take it seriously, but you don't feel like you're going to get a heart attack because why did he say that? You're like, okay, here he goes again. But you call it out without any emotion so you won't get cancer or get a heart attack because you're emotional about it. You shouldn't get emotional because that's the way it is.
I think he just likes creating chaos and panic.
Which is the worst parts of an Aries. So if I go to
Zodiacs...
No,
it's like Putin now. Sorry, we're now 2022. Let's flash forward. He doesn't care that he's creating chaos in Ukraine.
Narcissists like it.
They do not care if other people are panicking or hurt or inconvenienced by whatever actions they do by law or
because everything is about them.
Because it's all about them. That's what narcissists are like. They don't care if they inconvenience 100,000 refugees. They don't care if an entire Metro Manila has to walk to work, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, they don't care.
Even doctors walking to work.
We'll talk about that in the other episodes.
Anyway.
We will end with, Mr. Duterte, our president, said, nothing to fear. You're getting hysterical. It will just die natural death without vaccines.
And that's why when I posted at that time, I was always posting with this.
So here we are, more than 2 years later, and of course, did his words come to pass? Let me read the statistics. As of March 21 to 27, 2022, this is from DOH statistics. The cases for the week are plus 2,726. There are 0 new and severe critical cases. Deaths verified during this past week, 752. Daily average cases, 389.
We've had, since then, it's 2022, we've had total cases,
3,677,376. Most recovered, but still 59,030 dead.
But the fully vaccinated are?
Fully vaccinated, let's go back to what he said. You don't need a vaccine, he said.
The fully vaccinated are 65 million.
640,834. Individuals with booster doses, 11,825, 400.
But remember, they only started picking up the pace on the vaccination when we were reported by Bloomberg as one of the worst performing countries in the world.
2 straight years, I think we should check. I think it was 2
we
straight years.
We had the longest lockdown in the world, and then Bloomberg reported we had like the worst performing economy?
Yeah, and worst performing pandemic response.
I mean, look, our internet sucks. They're bombing Ukraine, and their internet is better than us.
Yeah.
Than ours. So
anyway, we'll double check the research, but I think Bloomberg
was the one that said we were the worst performing. But at the end of a year and a half, we were the worst performing.
For 2 straight years. Economy. Pretty much.
Because everybody else
pandemic response
had some form of business going, even during the lockdowns.
That's economy, but then we're also on the list of worst response.
Meaning worst government response.
One of the worst. We're like
so
at the
except
bottom.
for the office of the vice president, they were really working their asses off. And I know because the designers were working with them to make PPE. Except for with exception to the office of the vice president that proved itself worthy.
And perhaps some other localized governments that we don't know
maybe
about.
like certain local governments
That we don't know about.
Like Marikina was excellent. The mayor is a doctor. He's excellent.
No, that's what happens. So we'll get into that more in other episodes. But
So government, what was our point?
government pandemic crime.
No. I mean, the reason we started talking about
The reason why we started talking about it is because people are in the church of forgetting. Do not forget what they did to us the last 2 years. Do not vote for the same people
who did all of
this
these
to
things.
us, or don't vote for anybody connected to these people.
Because frankly, more people were convinced by more people were convinced to go pink because they saw how the office of the vice president performed during a crisis. Because true leaders perform well during a crisis, like Angela Merkel. I mean, they just know what to do.
Yeah. And my wife's
just
even,
know.
my wife's even more of a pink than I am. I'm still skeptical, but I know she did work.
She really
There,
did
factually, if you fact check, she did work. Her
during the
office did work.
pandemic, and that's why she's more popular now.
The government
And she didn't do it to become popular.
The government of Duterte did bare minimum, or even not even bare minimum, and of course,
No, they were focused more on like closing down
which we'll talk about.
television stations.
We'll talk about that in another episode. So
That was their priority, not vaccination.
for today's pandemic crime number one, the government downplaying and not.
So this is just the opinion of two middle-aged artists, writers. Doesn't really matter because they're still gonna do what they want to do. We're just saying what most people our age are thinking. Our circles, our friends. We're just saying it because, it's our job. We're the writers, so we'll say it. And we wrote it all in our diary, so we might as well share it. And I said I was gonna do it anyway, so. We kept the journal and we're just sharing the journal with you. That's all we're doing.
So up to February 3 was the
Don't be so hysterical.
Don't be so hysterical, according to our president at that time. So again, for next episodes, take note. If you remember, the government had more than a month, or at least a month,
Oh my God.
to prepare for a lockdown, which happened on March 15, 2020. We'll talk
Because
about
they
that in
knew
subsequent
January,
episodes.
they knew by January 25th that something was going on.
Yes.
So by the time they locked down in March, that was
Bit
a
too
lot
late.
of time.
A lot of time. So if you say it's a bit too late, but actually fine, you're going to prepare. Did
And-
they prepare? Let's hear
Well,
in the
their
next
excuse
episodes.
was that there's never been a pandemic that hit us before, so that was always
Which
there.
is actually partially a lie because Dairit, who was the DOH secretary under Gloria Arroyo, handled SARS, handled MERS.
It wasn't a pandemic.
It wasn't a pandemic, but they made sure, even though Gloria is also problematic as a leader, at least her government handled SARS and MERS.
It never reached.
It never reached.
Did it ever reach?
No, it did not.
Nobody got sick here.
Nobody got sick. Or if it did, it was squashed
It was
immediately.
contained.
Immediately. Here, we already know something has happened. There are 2 people confirmed. 1 died already. People were exposed to these people in different parts of the Philippines. You already have a precedent to prepare because, yun nga, what's happening in China at this point, my mistake, it wasn't happening in Italy yet. What's happening in China at this point, it's spreading fast. It's spreading fast in China right now, in Wuhan. That's at this point, January 2020 to February 2020. Into March.
So
So we'll see what happens.
that was episode 1. That was from our research and my notes and our journal from January 25 to Feb 3, 2020.
Stay safe, stay healthy.
Ooh, 30 minutes.